Hello. Lois is here.
Lois, can you go on mute, please?
Yep.
Thank you. I'll start in a couple of minutes, okay? Okay, everybody, good morning. And welcome to the Shawgills 2021 Annual General Meeting. Obviously, we are doing this as a virtual meeting, and I'm hoping that next year we'll be able to do it in face-to-face. Zoom is a useful tool for meetings, but it's no substitute for actually being in the same room when we talk about matters where we're voting. But the reality is that there's a hesitancy to attend in-person meetings still. And that we have recognized that perhaps in a way, this will reach a wider audience, those that are hesitant about joining us face-to-face. Now, before we actually commence proceeding, just a reminder of the process that we're following. The meeting is being recorded. There will be a link provided following the meeting to get access if you want to actually review things that have been said during the meeting. I'd ask that you put your microphones on mute to avoid any background music, and I'd ask you to do that now. If you have any questions about any process, by the way, just put them in the chat function, and you'll find that down the bottom of your screen in the middle. Just click onto that, and that will bring up your chat function. As we go through the contents of the meeting, and I'll introduce the agenda in a minute, we will be asking for motions. I'll be asking for a proposer. I will read the motion, then I will ask for a proposer and a seconder. And then you will do that by using that chat function. Each time we have a motion, there'll be a polling question that will pop up, and you have 30 seconds to click yes or no to the motion. And then Cheryl will share with us the results of those polls. If you always want to see the speaker during the meeting, click on the view icon in the top upper right of your screen and click speaker. There will be two main speakers today, myself and, as Laurie describes him, Joe Alivato, our treasurer. If there are any questions, either to myself, to Joe, or to a specific chair or convener, I will ask that individual. If Joe and I can't answer the questions, I will ask that individual to respond. Mary Meisen, our VP, will be keeping track of any questions that you may post in the chat function, and will ensure that questions are asked by judicious interruption of myself. So I hope that's all clear. Just a warning, with all the best will in the world, we may face some technical issues. I was at a board meeting on Saturday, and we did have a few technical issues, but we all worked around that, and it was a very successful meeting. And I hope that's going to be true today. Without further ado, I'll begin the meeting, as is the Shaw Festival's AGM convention, by reading aloud the Guild's Land Acknowledgement Statement. We introduced this in year. You'll see that up on the screen now. It may be a little bit of an eye test for you, so I'll read it anyway. Niagara-on-the-Lake is situated on the historical land of the First Nations people. In fact, there's evidence that the area around the Shaw Festival Theatre was once an ancient site for Indigenous ritual ceremonies and storytelling. As we know, theatre is based on gathering people for a communal experience. We owe a debt of gratitude to the first peoples of this land, especially thank the Neutral Nation, the Sasaga, Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe for their continued stewardship over the millennia. And now what I'd like to do is just quickly review the agenda with you. Once I've read this into the record, we will have our first motion. So obviously we want to get approval of the agenda, approval of the minutes of the last AGM last year. I will then introduce some remarks. Then I will turn to Joe to have his report. And then we'll table and hopefully approve the reports that were contained in the annual report that was issued to you. And these are the reports of chairs and conveners. We'll then move on to election of officers and chairs. And then we'll go on to bylaw amendments, and I'll introduce that. There's a preamble to the discussion on bylaw amendments. We'll then do introduction of executive members, and then if there is any new business, then we'll introduce that. And then to conclude the meeting, there will be a motion of closure. But I would ask you to stay on for one last minute. There's a surprise kind of addition to the agenda. not official. Without further ado, the first motion. The motion is to approve the agenda. And the motion is that the agenda as presented be approved. So I'm looking for a first, a proposer, and a seconder. So this is where you actually go into the chat function and type in yes that you want to either propose it, and then I'll ask for a seconder as well. So Susan McDonald, sorry, Suzanne Hébert has proposed, and I see Laurie Harley has seconded that. So that, and now could we have the poll, Cheryl, please? Excellent. And now the second motion, and the motion is that the minutes of the 2020 annual general meeting be approved. I'd like to hear a proposer. I'll see a proposer. Jane King Watson has proposed, Mark Mather has seconded. Could we have the poll, please? Thank you, everybody. 100% on both polls, so we'll move on. And I'd like to share a few remarks with you. Those of you that read last year's report and attended last year's AGM will recall that Laurie began the meeting by the understatement of the year, which was 2020, what a year. Obviously, COVID hit us really hard last year, and yet we still had a year that we can be proud of. And I almost began my remarks with paraphrasing what Laurie had said, which was, 2021, what another year. But what I'd like to say is that, first and foremost, an AGM is by its very nature retrospective of the year just past. And you will hopefully have seen that in the reports of the Guild's officers and chairs in this year's annual report that was issued recently. And I truly hope that you've had an opportunity to read them, because those reports also do focus on early plans for 2022. And if you look at them and then combine the themes, there's a general theme of us anticipating a return to normality. I'll endeavor not to repeat too much of what is contained in those reports or what you will read in the newsletter, which is actually on the website as I speak. And I hope that you'll agree that for all its continued and constant challenges, 2021 is a year that we in the Guild can look back on with some pride. As an executive, we focused on keeping you, our volunteers, engaged and connected to the company through the year, to our online events, and later in the year with face-to-face meetings, such as the Coffee Connections. We really wanted to focus to keep you engaged, and I think they were fairly successful in their way, in fact, very successful. Now back to sort of events that we were actually able to do this year. And I refer specifically to our two main fundraising events, Sip, Saver and Stroll and the annual garden tour. And kudos to the teams that actually organized and ran those events, and to you as volunteers. We planned those events. We then had to replan those events because of changing circumstances and ever-changing protocols. We had to change dates. There was some doubt whether we would be able to actually hold those events. But if you look at the results that resulted from that hard work, the organization, the commitment of our garden owners, participants, and our sponsors, they were really remarkable from a patron experience. And I got that firsthand by talking to patrons in every garden for both events, and also in terms of financial return on the investment. Without your contribution as volunteers, and to use a theatrical truism, our two shows could not have gone on. So thank you, all of you that participated in those events. Thank you. When we were allowed to come back in the theatre, the first group that came back was the garden team. And hats off to the garden team, because they were faced with a really daunting challenge of putting back gardens that had been sadly neglected in their absence. I joined them, I think, their second week, and I know that it was, for me, a very emotional experience. And I'm not one for that. I'm not one for gardening either. But the fact that we were actually in those beautiful surroundings, working hard to refresh the gardens, was a very, very, very moving experience. And I thank the garden team for the hard work. It coincided, as you will recall, with some brutal weather during the summer as well. So hats off to you all. And then in September, our greeting and hosting volunteers returned and enabled our patrons through the vaccination verification, ID, so checking and ticket checking and scanning with good humor. Now, we designed and implemented accelerated training programs to accommodate the holiday season demands. As you are aware, there are 3 shows running at the moment, and those require more of us to be involved directly in greeting and hosting. But I have to tell you, back to the kind of the notion of hesitancy at the moment, I think Greg will agree that we've had some challenges in filling shifts, especially on the hosting side. And I recognize myself that there may be still some hesitancy in situations where there are numbers of people congregating. But I can tell you from my experience, so far I've completed 3 hosting shifts. The strict safety protocols that SURE have put in place and maintained do offer a level of comfort, and certainly are observed by patrons. I think the one thing that I would say to you as well as an experienced host is that the holiday season is one of my favorite times of the year to host. You get a lot of new people to the theatre and are excited by that prospect. Not to say that returning patrons are not, they wouldn't be returning patrons, but there's a special kind of atmosphere in the air. And I found that people will accept and have accepted the kind of inconvenience of having to fish out IDs and vaccination certificates and tickets, the like, in good humor. And I would thank you, those of you that have hosted or greeted, for making them feel welcome and for enhancing the experience that they have. And I'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. One of the things that I've learned as a new board of director is that the board is very interested in the community activities that we've been involved in. Specifically, I refer to the ambassador program that we began in 2020, and then its successor, the Ambassador 2.0 program. And the biggest compliment that the Guild has received is that the town and other people involved in tourism reached out to us as an organization to help them move forward on this tourist-based ambassador program. I would say for us involved in the Shore Guild, all the work that we do, it means that it won't be a big stretch for us to be patrons. My contention is that we're patrons in everything we do when we face our patrons, and we're ambassadors when we face patrons. And I think that it will be one of those really rewarding activities that we continue through 2022 and beyond. I hope you accept when you see Joe's presentation in a couple of minutes that we've been doing this whilst managing the business prudently. And again, I hope you agree with what you will see from Joe's presentation. Thank you. Thank you all for your support throughout this difficult year, whether you be a long-term Guild volunteer or one of the 28 new volunteers who joined this year. And finally, just one personal quick commentary, if I'm allowed. Obviously, the reason that we are all Guild volunteers is to show our support for the Shore Festival. It's been a remarkable and challenging time for them, for the Shore Festival, and for us, but particularly for the Shore Festival. But it's really rewarding to see their prescient foresight that kept the company whole, as reported extensively and regularly in the business section. Who'd have thought that artistic enterprise such as ours would feature in business commentary on a regular basis? And that may have slightly overshadowed, to some extent, the tremendous artistic achievements of this blessed season. current season. And for those of you that were able to attend any of the shows, concerts, outdoor programming, and so on, I think you'd have to agree that it was a banner year artistically, with 2022 promising to be more of the same and maybe more. It's the longest season, I think, in show's history. It's jam-packed with goodies. Now we continue, just a final remark, we continue to be recognized by show's business and artistic entities and by the board as an important contributor to the success that the festival enjoys. On Saturday afternoon, I attended a board of directors meeting, and Peter Jewett, who is the chair of the board of directors, asked me to pass on the board's acknowledgement of our contribution to the show. And he did so in very warm terms. And I happily share that with you. And I thank you for staying with us this year and for everything that you do and have done for the show. And now, without further ado, I'd like to bring Joe Alivato on the screen to present his report. Now, somebody asked me this morning how I felt about going into this meeting. I felt fine going in. We well prepared, we had rehearsed. But we're now on the high wire act, because when I introduced Joe, I'm tempted to say, direct from Vegas, here's Joe Alivato. Joe loves being on stage, but he's promised, and we're going to hold him to this promise, that he will repeat only one of his grown-up stories this year, and we'll focus on the business at hand. So, Joe, please give your report to the Guild.
Greetings. Greetings from Las Vegas. It's good to virtually see everyone. I'm dressed in a summer shirt because I missed the beach. For many years, we had a house on the beach, and when children would come to the beach, they would ask if they could go into the water. And I would say, yes, you can go into the water, but you have to follow the milk rule. The milk rule is that you can go into the water, but not pasteurize. I tried homogenized, I've tried whole milk, but only pasteurized works. So I'm going to follow you. I'm going to walk you through the numbers because the numbers tell a story. First of all, I'd like to thank Brigman and Dirksen for preparing the financial reports for us. Now, on the membership line, although membership revenue was lower this year than last year, Susan McDonald exceeded our expectations of $5,000 very, very well. So great going. On the volunteer line, let's go back to membership, because membership also includes administration. And on the administration side, we had communication expenses for Cheryl's line of about $875, and that was for Zoom fees and survey tools. For guild activities, Brenda had expenses of $375, and that was mainly for the coffee connections. For hosting and greeting, Mark and Greg had 0 expenses. For the docent line, Arlene had 0 expenses. And for the MVP line, Kim had expenses of $735, and that is typical. For the volunteer line, we had no revenue because there was no availability of volunteers to attend any of the shows. There were no shows. We had expenses of $1,500, and that was for Patty Parr and her gardening team and for all of the work they do for the Shaw Gardens. I'll go to the fundraising line next. There, the revenue exceeded expectations. Now, this was primarily due to about $31,000 that was donated to the garden tour and Sip, Savor, and Stroll events by way of products and services from local businesses. For the garden tour, the story of donations actually goes back to 2019, when Susan Hebert, the garden tour manager at that time, and her team were able to get donations of about $12,000 for the garden tour. Unfortunately, the tour was canceled in 2020, but most of the merchants left their funds with the Guild so that Jane Catcher, the chair for 2021, had a head start in her fundraising. So donations for the garden tour eventually totaled just over $18,000. Meanwhile, Mary Mizzen, chair of the Sip, Sizzle, and Stroll event, was able to get donations of $12,700. Both of these events were very successful, and that is how the Guild was able to donate $35,000 to the Shaw Festival. Can we go to the special projects slide next? Now, the special projects was never intended to donate a profit for the Shaw Guild. You may recall that the idea came from Emily Lukasik, one of the Shaw actresses, and she proposed that the Guild and she help to raise money for local merchants who were not doing well during the COVID lockdowns. So I'm showing all three of the special events together just to give a total picture of what happened. So the total sales of boxes were just over $25,000. 22,500 went to local merchants. That is about 90%. I thought when I first looked at the other funds, the other 10%, I thought, okay, that has gone to expenses. And then when I started to analyze that, I realized that of that other 10%, almost 8% went to other merchants. Now, they weren't local merchants. They may have been in St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, or in Burlington, because we bought all of our boxes in Burlington. But it does show that nearly 98% of all of the money raised went to merchants to help them out during this difficult time. I should also mention that Emily Lukasik's parents have been very, very generous in printing the logo of the Lotto project on all of the boxes that were used. So big thank you for Emily and her parents for helping out. So although we've had a difficult year, the projects have really come to fruition. And I've seen firsthand how Lori Harley and her team have really had an interesting time managing the special projects, because it's not easy. Sales and trying to get supplies when you don't know what the final sales number is going to be. So that is a difficult task to handle. So let's go back and take a look at the donations that the Guild has made to Shaw Festival. Okay, we'll just look at the summary. Last year, we actually had a loss of about $7,500. This year, we are in a profit of about $1,000. On the donation side, we were able to complete our commitment to the Christmas Carol support. So this is the third and final year of the $25,000 that has gone to them. And then there is a new fund, a resiliency fund, that is to help the Shaw just navigate through who knows what's going to happen. On the donation side, there was a $500 grant from the Royal Bank to the Shaw Gardens. Thank you, Brian Parr. There was another $500 from the Shaw, from the Honda Go Fund. And then we had another, let's see, $2,500 go to the Guild Education Fund from IBM staff, another $185 from an IBM former staff that's gone to the Artisans Fund. And then there was an individual donation, a Shaw Guild member donated for the gardens. And then we had $9,700 that went to the Guild, to the Shaw Festival rather, from earnings from the Guild Endowment Fund. And then the Shaw Garden Fund also spent $1,500 for the Shaw Gardens. So with that, I'd like to make a motion that you accept my report and my one joke. No, okay, let's forget the joke.
So the motion, do we have a proposer for the motion? Lois and Lorraine Horton second. And could we have the poll, Cheryl, please? Thank you. Thank you all. Now we'll move to a quick discussion on the executive committee reports. As you'll see, there's a list of executive committee members who submitted reports that are in the annual report. And you've probably not been able to see many of the executive and without them wearing masks. So here is a slide showing what we all look like. So Cheryl, can you bring that one up, please? Oh, there we are. Now, shameless self-promotion. We are an amazing leadership team. I would say that I would just like to thank my colleagues on the executive for being such a support this year and for everything that you've done. Hopefully, those of you that have not met these individuals, they are very approachable, certainly by email at the moment, calls, whatever. And hopefully early in the year, we'll get together and you can actually meet them then in person. Okay, now this, as is our normal practice, we read the reports into the record and don't actually go through them. And again, just to reiterate what I said at the beginning, that I do hope you'll take the time to read those reports. If you have any questions, once you have that, we'll be happy to take them following the conclusion of this meeting as well. So the motion is to approve the reports of the executive committee. So the reports of the executive committee as tabled be accepted, and that's the motion. Could I have a proposer? That's Lois and Betty DeCero second. And could we have the poll, please, Cheryl? Thank you. Now we're going to move on to discuss the election of officers and chairs. And this is the work that is done by the nominating committee. And as you will see, that's constituted under Article X111 of the Show Guild bylaws. The past president, in this case, Laurie Harman is the chair, Laurie Harley is the chair of the nominating committee. And the other members of the committee are myself, Mary Misen, our vice president, and Wendy Glazier and John Mather, Show Guild members in good standing. Now, as well as we'll talk about new chairs, we are actually losing two members of the executive committee not returning. Their terms are up, Paddy Parr, Shaw Festival Gardens, and Kim Mustill, MVP chair. And we also, as you will recall, lost Gail Kendall after the garden tour. We have the great good fortune of obviously still seeing Gail in local media and the like, and she still will be an active Guild member, just not on, Guild volunteer, just not on the executive. Now, I just want to take a quick aside. I haven't quite finished on that, Cheryl. There are several other Guild members who will be leaving long-held positions, specifically on fundraising activities. And we decided to acknowledge all the individuals, including the two individuals, Paddy and Kim, shown on this slide, those individuals in the newsletter. For the very practical reason, it will reach a wider audience than is usually in attendance at the AGM. And they have been prepared by either officers, such as myself, chairs or conveners, which really are the people that know them best. Those acknowledgements and thanks are in the newsletter. It's on the website now, and I think will be issued via e-blast tomorrow. So I would say this, most of the individuals that I had talked to about acknowledgements and the like basically tell me, paraphrasing, we don't want a fuss, but we have acknowledged them, and I would encourage you to read the newsletter and to reach out to them as individuals to thank them for everything that they have done. Okay, if we can move to the next slide. Again, in accordance with one of the articles in our bylaws, the following Guild members will serve for a second of a 2-year term ending in November 2022, in other words, a year from now. Myself as president, Laurie as past president, Mary as vice president, and you'll see fundraising chair against Mary's name. I'll talk about that in a minute. Treasurer Joe Alivato, Secretary Deborah Williams, Activities Chair Brenda Weaver, Greeting Chair Mark Mather, and Communications Cheryl Morris. Then the following Guild members are nominated to serve for a term of 2 years, with their term ending the following year, i.e. November 2023. Membership Chair Susan McDonald, Hosting Chair Greg Fedoran, Shaw Festival Gardens Jane Catcher, and I will talk about that in a minute, that position. Docent Chair Arlene Carson, and MVP Chair Margot Devlin. If we move on to the next one, now, just as I said a minute ago, the following Guild chair positions have been combined on a pilot basis for 2022. Mary Misen is taking on the fundraising role as well as a pilot, and there is sense in that Mary, as most of you will recall, was involved heavily in Sip, Saver and Stroll organization. And I think that though the workload will increase for Mary later in the year, we're working on a plan to have Mary review more of the board type work, and I've still got to discuss that with Tim Jennings yet, but maybe later in the year. So it's an easier handover to do the board work outside of the Guild work. But it will be on a pilot basis, and we will be looking in future for a fundraising chair. There is precedent for this. I myself, when I was garden tour convener, also had that fundraising role. And Jane Catcher, who was the garden tour convener this year, has also offered to be the Shaw Festival Gardens chair. And there's obviously some synergy there with both roles. And I thank Jane for doing that. And thank Mary for also taking on an extra load of work. Okay, now, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we lost Gail Kendall as marketing convener, and the executive committee have appointed Joanne Bealey as marketing convener, reporting to the communications chair. And you will have seen from information that we sent prior to this meeting in compliance of our bylaws, what an extensive career Joanne has had, and we welcome her to our organization. So without further ado, I'd like to put that next motion up on. And this relates to the approval by yourselves of the election of executive committee members. So the motion being that the slate of executive committee members as presented be approved. So I want to propose it, please. Lois Chapman, and a seconder, please. Suzanne Hebert. Sorry, I'm seeing somebody called Don Mew. Forgive me. It's I guess it must be right. Wait, we have a seconder. It's Kim, right? Sorry, Kim. Thank you, everybody. And now a sneak peek at the new leadership team. There they are. So thank you, everybody. Now, I'd like to give you a little bit of a preamble to the bylaw amendments that we're going to place in front of you now. The first two relate to the President of the Shore Guild's relationship to the Shore Festival Board of Governors and Board of Directors. The next one will talk about the age requirement of membership, and then finally we're going to talk about a nominating committee procedural change. The first one relates to regularizing wording for the role of the Shore Guild President as being a governor of the Corporation of the Shore Festival. And this was occasioned by a motion that elected the President of the Shore Guild to the Board of Directors. Previously, that had been on an invitation ad hoc basis. So what you're seeing now in relation to the Board of Governors bylaw amendment is regularized wording to be in the same wording as the Shore Festival's motion to elect the Shore Guild President as a director of the Shore Corporation. I hope I haven't confused you with that, but this is what you're seeing now. So we already had a bylaw around the governor, the guild president being a Board of Governor member. What we've done is regularize the language to be in compliance with the motion to elect the president as a Board of Director member. So can we have the motion? So that the bylaw amendment for Article 3.1, with all the wording that it contained, as presented, be adopted by the Guild volunteers. Paul? Thank you, Cheryl. So the second bylaw amendment in relation to our relationship with the Shore. This is the wording that elected the Shore Guild President as automatically as a member of the director of the Corporation Shore Festival. As you'll see, there is no current bylaw wording because it didn't exist. So if I can move to the motion now, that the bylaw amendment for Article 3.2 as presented be adopted. If we do the poll, please.
Ellen, it's Mary. Do we need a first and second first before
Sorry.
we?
Yeah, sorry. A proposer. Livia Martin, our proposer. We need a seconder. Mary Meisen. So sorry, I apologize. Okay. Thank you, everybody. So the next bylaw amendment, we've added the words to the membership requirement to relate to the years of age that you have to be a member. This is to be in compliance with the Show Festival's insurance coverage. So we've added the words have to be at least 18 years of age. So to regularize us being in compliance with that insurance coverage, that's why you're seeing this motion now. If I could, so can we put the motion on screen, please? So the bylaw amendment for Article 4.1 as presented be adopted. So I have a proposer, please. Jane King Watson propose, and a seconder. I'm Betty DeCero. Thank you. Paul? Yep. Thank you. Now the fourth amendment, bylaw amendment, relates to procedural change for the Shore Guild nominating committee, and I mentioned who that body was. And the reason why we're doing this is to facilitate more time for the nominating committee to consider open positions for the executive committee. And it requires then them giving us more time to do that, to look at candidate submissions to be reviewed and have a longer time than, so pulling that back to June 30th rather than September the 1st. I would say that we have a lot of new members who are very well qualified to take on roles in the future. And I think, you know, we may have an embarrassment of riches. So this is a very practical bylaw, just to give that body more time to receive candidate submissions and to have more considered time before they present it to the executive committee to then be presented to you for motions to be elected. So if I could have the motion up, please. So in relation to the nominating committee requirement that I've just stated, that bylaw amendment for Article X111.3 as presented be adopted. Could I have a proposer, please? Now, Brenda Weaver proposed. Don't I have a, oh, sorry. Lorraine Horton proposed, Brenda Weaver second. Here's the poll. Thank you, everybody. Now, is there any new business? Are there any questions, or does anybody want to raise new business at this time? As Mary's just indicated, if you have any questions, just put them in the chat. I'm seeing no questions, but I would offer to any of you that that are on with us today that you think of any questions once you've digested the meeting. Feel free to contact any of us, and we will endeavour to do our best to actually answer those questions. Okay, I'd like to.
Sorry, Alan, we have a question. I think would be directed to Arlene. Will tours begin in the spring? Arlene, are you on mute?
Trying to. Okay, I'm unmuting. As far as I know, tours will return in April for the public tours as scheduled. I don't at this point know if there will be any group tours prior to that, but we're hoping that things will go forward. Okay.
Any other questions?
Arlene, any other questions? I think we're good, Alan.
Okay, well, motion to adjourn the meeting. The motion being that the Shore Guild 2021 annual general meeting be adjourned. I need a proposer, please. Susanna Burr proposed, seconder, please. Laurie Halley, enthusiastically, I have to say. Thank you. Now, just a quick thank you before you actually leave. I would like to thank all of you for attending and for your continued support. And I would also now like to share with you something that will be hitting local media and the Star and the Globe. It's not official yet. Cheryl, have you got that slide? So please treat that. This is still not an official thing, but it's just to show you that you're getting a standing ovation as Guild organization, thanking you for everything that we do. And I don't know, again, that might be a bit of an eye test for you, but Tim Carroll, artistic director, who sounds a little bit like me, so close your eyes, you'd think you were hearing from him. I know you appreciated the effort, spirit, and skill that went into 2021 because you told us. We would also like to thank you for the incredible support you have shown us. We already knew we couldn't do it without you. And this reminded us that we wouldn't even be here without you. And that's Tim Carroll, artistic director. And as you will see on the graphic that Cheryl sharing with you, there we are right in the middle. As you see, it's all done by alphabetically. Happily for us, that puts us right in the middle of that piece. So look out for that in the Globe or the Star or the local Niagara publications, and enjoy. And sincerely from myself and for the rest of the executive team, thank you for staying with us this year, and onward and upward to the 60th anniversary of Shore Festival in 2022 and our own involvement as a volunteer organization from the early days, in fact, from its inception through to when we were constituted in 74 and beyond. So thank you very much. Thank you for your time this morning. And I wish you all the happiest of holiday seasons for you and your loved ones. Keep well and safe. See you next year.